It's really going to be difficult. So please hold on, take a deep breath, and don't try to understand everything. That's what my focus is. So just try to have the essence, just try to have the basic points, so that once again I say, when you go back, you are aware that what to study. Okay, so that's the primary target of these kinds of schools. Okay, so back to business. Discussing is that, and in one side you have your hot Big Bang cosmology, which is basically, so you are starting from decelerating phase, so to say, which is also expanding, like at very early time you have your radiation dominated era, then when the universe cooled down, you had your matter dominated era. Once again, this is a different phase, this is, here also universe is expanding, but you have another decelerating phase and so on and so forth. And at very late time, you will have, as you will see in Anjan's lecture, you will have dark energy kind of thing when your universe will once again expand. But forget about those things. If you consider these intermediate phases, which is basically, which I call this hot Big Bang cosmology and everything, then you have two different era or an admixture of both of them, but you guarantee that your universe is expanding, but at a decelerated rate. That's it. Now, this is what you have as a theory. And from experiment, what you see that you have lots of different features coming out of CMB, substituted by different observations at different redshifts. Like for intermediate redshift, you have this galaxy clustering data. For say comparatively lower redshift, you have this data coming from SN1A survey. Okay, so on and so forth. These results are basically complementary. So CMB basically deals with the large redshift data, and all of them are either intermediate redshift data or low redshift data. But these things are complementary, and put together, they basically tell you is that you have different cosmic constituents. You have your baryonic matter, you have radiation, you have dark matter, you have dark energy, you have curvature kind of thing. So all of them, you can precisely estimate their fractional contribution to the cosmic budget. Okay, and they are pretty consistent. So this is one information, but as I said, doing cosmology is really difficult. What you readily get is their values as of now. Okay, so today when I say omega m is this is expressed over there that its value, so this is the value as of now. Okay, and on top of that you have the redshift evolution. So if you put your redshift evolution on top of that, you will say it's how much amount of fractional contribution it basically gives at different redshift. Okay, so this is the basic concept. Along with that, in CMB, you see, as I said, basically in CMB you have different other features. And the final conclusion is that is what I'll start from today. Basically, there is a mismatch of hot Big Bang cosmology and observation. Okay, so this is what I call CMB observation, early universe observation. Okay, so there is a mismatch, so that you need to propose something new, something exotic. Okay, I'll come to that point later on. You need to propose something exotic that you don't have hot Big Bang cosmology at the very early stage, but at very early stage you do have some other kind of thing which basically naturally boils down to hot Big Bang cosmology at some later stage. Okay, so first of all, let us discuss the limitations of hot Big Bang cosmology. There are lots of limitations, but I will basically focus on four major limitations, which already demands that you should propose something else at very early time. Okay, so let us first of all discuss the limitations of hot Big Bang cosmology. Okay, fine. So as we have seen in the hot Big Bang cosmology framework, in the right hand side, in the matter part, you have your standard model fields, and with any standard model field, you can write down your evolution of the universe A as t power 2 by 3 into 1 plus omega. Okay, and you know, if you put any value of omega which you know for radiation, matter, or an admixture of them, you can guarantee that this basically evolves as t power p with p less than 1. You put omega equals 1/3 for radiation, you put omega equals 0 for matter, all of them guarantees that this is a fraction which is less than 1. Okay, so now given this framework, let us discuss what are the limitations of this framework. Is this sufficient to explain CMB observation or not? Okay. So first and foremost, this CMB, as I've already discussed, say if you have this temperature anisotropy plot over here, and this temperature anisotropy plot, I think Jayanti has discussed this thing, like this temperature anisotropy, and from which peak you get the value, I mean which value, like different omega values and everything. She has discussed or not? Okay. So this was supposed to be discussed in CMB theory and observation group. So let me just focus on this part. Okay. So I will discuss this plot in details because this plot basically gives you lots of information. I think this, I mean, you should learn this thing once in a lifetime. I mean, so I don't know. But anyway, so let's just focus over here. So this position of this fast peak, so I'm not in a position to discuss which plot gives you which information and how, because that is not my primary target. Okay, so just take it for granted right now. But that position of this fast peak, so this is your L, and this is your L into L plus 1 into CL by 2 pi with microkelvin square in it. Okay, so this is around 240. This first peak, the peak, basically, it peaks at around L equals to 40. And you can show that this readily means your omega matter. So position of fast peak in CMB observation, okay, position of fast peak readily tells you that this omega total, okay, equals of the order of, as I had told you in the last class, this is of the order of pretty close to 1, okay. So this is the information you should take to be granted. This was supposed to be discussed in CMB theory, but so for this moment let us compromise a little bit and take it to be granted, okay. So this position basically, how does it basically gives you the value of omega? That is the point I am not discussing. Okay, fine. But this is, if you forget about all these things, you can take it or find that from CMB you get the data that your total omega matter, whatever matter you have, matter, energy or whatever you have, you sum them up and that value is pretty close to 1. This is what you get from CMB. Okay, fine. So this means your omega curvature, which I have defined like minus k by a naught squared h naught squared, okay, once again which I have basically defined as omega total minus 1, okay. So this is almost equal to 0 because observation tells me omega total is almost equal to 1, okay. So by definition, omega curvature, which is omega total minus 1, from observation we get omega total is almost equal to 1, so omega curvature is almost equal to 0. So the conclusion is that from geometry, as I said, from in FR geometry, FRW geometry, you get 3 values of k equals 0, plus 1 or minus 1. Okay, but your observation basically tells you how much is the value of k, that doesn't matter. How much is the value of omega k, as I said, these are the estimates from observable parameter. Okay, rho's are not important, but omegas are important. Okay, their fractional contribution is important. From observation, you can readily say that out of these 3 values, basically, omega curvature, basically from observation, takes the value is almost equal to 0. Okay, so this is what I have already pointed out in the last class. Omega curvature is around minus 0.0027, something like that. You just check your notes and you can find that out. Okay. Yes, any question? 1 minus? No, that is a notation. Basically, what you take is this value. That is a notation. So some people use 1 minus omega total, or some other people use omega total minus 1. Okay, that doesn't matter. Okay, fine. So this basically guarantees at the end of the day what is the physical output from here. The physical output is that your universe is spatially flat. This is the physical output. Okay. But let us get back to hot Big Bang cosmology and let us see what does it suggest. So hot Big Bang cosmology. In hot Big Bang cosmology, let us get back to that equation, like A double dot by A is your minus 4 pi g by 3 rho plus 3p. Okay, so this is your second Friedmann equation. And you know, you put any value of rho and p for whatever matter you know, that is for any standard model field, rho and p both of them are positive. So this quantity is a positive definite, which guarantees that A double dot is a negative definite quantity. Okay, so from here alone you can say that A double dot is less than 0. This is an essential output of Hort-Lindbergh cosmology. Okay, so whatever matter you know, you put that value over here and you see that A double dot is less than 0. So if A double dot is less than 0, then it guarantees that this quantity sitting over here, this is the value. So as I said, when naught is not explicitly written, you will have to assume that naught is there. So this basically means omega curvature as of now. Its value as of now. Okay. So if you see this, so that's why I say A naught square, H naught square, naught is written over here. Okay. So fine. So this basically tells you that if A double dot is less than 0, then this parameter A square, H square, now it is running. So it was running from earlier, I am estimating it today, and this is the value as of now, this is its present value. So this parameter, which is nothing but H is how much? H is A dot by A. So this parameter is nothing but A dot square. So if A double dot is less than 0, then this guarantees that this is basically a decreasing function, no? This is a decreasing function. So if you have a decreasing function sitting in the denominator, what is your conclusion? As time passes by, then what happens? This omega curvature basically increases. So that means omega total basically shifts away from 1. Omega curvature shifts away from 0. But this is in direct contradiction with what you get. For observation, you say that its value is almost equal to 0 as of now. But your Hort-Lindbergh cosmology basically tells you just the reverse. That its value should be much away from 0. Okay, so this is the conclusion that this basically tells you omega total basically this shifts away from 1. And I think I don't need to write down everything over here. So that will reduce time. Okay. So now what you do? First of all you try to see whether this thing survives or not. So you try to put by force a constraint into it so that its value is 0 today. How you can do that? You can claim that its value was very small at earlier time, so that it has evolved from then to now. Okay, so this was the first attempt. When this conflict was detected, the first attempt was that you try to propose that in order to get omega curvature with omega curvature almost equal 0, even in this framework, you propose that omega total minus 1 is less than 10 power minus 16. It's a very small quantity at nucleosynthesis. Nucleosynthesis, you know nucleosynthesis, you have studied thermal history and everything? Okay, fine. So this was the first proposal, but people once again were not satisfied with this, because this means this is an extreme fine tuning basically. This is an extreme fine tuning. And the question that remains is that out of hundreds and thousands of values, why at all our universe chose this much amount of fine tuning at very early time? There is no reason behind that thing to choose this value. But unless it chooses this value in Hort-Lindbergh framework, it cannot really boil down to omega curvature equals 0 today. So as you know, in say in any kind of theoretical physics, people are not satisfied with fine tuning, because fine tunings are just, they basically tell you that we cannot explain this thing, so we assume that this is this. So to be very honest, fine tunings are not very good explanations. Okay, so that's why people try to explain that somehow there is a problem of Hort-Lindbergh cosmology which basically leads to this anomalous phenomena. Okay, so this is the first and foremost phenomena, that people are not satisfied with this fine tuning. you need to explain this fine tuning. Even if you have this fine tuning, you need to explain this thing, why at all the value is this. Okay, and in hot Big Bang framework, you cannot explain that. So first and foremost, the catch is that observation suggests that omega curvature should be almost equal to 0 today, but your hot Big Bang cosmology cannot satisfactorily explain that thing. Okay, so this is the first limitation of hot Big Bang cosmology. Is it clear to everybody? Okay, fine. That's it. Oh, I can use that board. Okay, and this is what I call basically flatness problem, because this is related to spatially flattened. Okay, fine. So second, let us see. As I have already discussed, my CMB observation, the primary output of CMB observation is that the CMB temperature is around 2.73 Kelvin at all directions. This is the very important phrase involved over here. Look at any direction of the sky and you see that temperature is around 2.73 Kelvin. That's why I say our universe is pretty homogeneous and isotropic at the largest scale. Look at any arbitrary direction and you see, measure the temperature, and the temperature turns out to be 2.73 Kelvin, nothing else. Okay, there are very small amount of fluctuations which for this moment we are just ignoring. Okay, so you look at any direction and the temperature turns out to be this. Essential conclusion from here is that the photons are basically thermally stabilized. Okay, so that's why you had distribution of photons and they are got thermally stabilized, and that's why you see same temperature at any direction. Okay, so this basically means the photons are basically thermally stabilized. So this is the catch here. From observation, our conclusion is that photons are thermally stabilized at very early time. Okay? That's it. Now, before going to hot Big Bang cosmology, let us define a new quantity which I call particle horizon. What does it mean? This particle horizon is defined as a quantity which basically tells you the maximum distance covered by light from the less scattering surface to today. Okay, so this I call particle horizon, and I define this quantity as dHt. I'll explain in a minute what does it mean. Okay, so I define this thing as AT into dHt, where this dHt is called co-moving horizon. What does it mean? Sorry, co-moving distance. What does it mean? This is Ti dt prime. What does it mean? First of all, let us get back to our class 7 kind of physics. While doing thermal physics, we used to do a very well-known problem. The problem is that if you have a metallic scale, you need to do temperature correction to it, because its readings, they are basically changed. The units are changed with temperature. So you need to do temperature correction to it. Why do you do this thing? Because the unit with which you are measured, that should be such that your measurements are same and same every time. Okay, the same thing happens over here. In cosmology, measuring a distance is a real problem. Why? Because when you say distance in cosmic language, the distance means there is a very large distance, there is a point sitting over here. Okay, and you are the observer, the photon is coming from here to here, somehow you are measuring the path of the photon. Okay, so now in course of traversing the path, you have the background is basically expanding. Okay, so what you say that this is my 5,000 kilometers or 5 million kilometers or something like that. In course of that time, basically your universe has expanded to some extent. Okay, so what you measure as 5,000 kilometers or 5 million kilometers, that is not actually 5,000 or 500 kilometers. Okay, is it clear to everybody? Because, so that's why I take this analogy of the temperature correction due to the scales, that here also you need to take care of the correction coming from the expansion of the universe. Because for the expansion of the universe, the scale, basically the width, say that the unit of the scale is basically changing over here. Okay. So if you take that, so somehow you will have to, but basically that does not serve your purpose. So your measurements are erroneous, and here we are talking about precision cosmology. We are trying to get more and more precise data. So first and foremost, you will have to confirm that, you will have to redefine a scale in such a way that your measurements are basically invariant. Okay. And so in cosmology, we don't say that distance between these 2 points are invariant. In other language, what we say is that we define a quantity which is defined like this. Okay, and since this quantity readily takes care of the evolution of the universe as well, this parameter is an invariant quantity for here. Okay, so instead of measuring just the distance between these 2 points, we will measure this quantity and we will call it as a distance. Okay, is the logic clear to everybody? Okay, so this is like what I call co-moving distance, as simple as that. So this basically guarantees that whatever distance you measure, that is invariant, that is perfect. Okay, you have confirmed that this distance is correct distance. Very simple language. Okay, fine. So given this, what you get is that, as I have discussed, in the last scattering, basically what happens is that, so now, this is your last scattering surface. Okay, and you are an observer sitting over here. Photons are coming from last scattering surface towards you at all directions. And you are measuring the temperature to be 2.73 Kelvin at all directions. Okay, so now for the last scattering surface, this dH is how much? This is T at decoupling. Okay, so this is the distance finally you are measuring. So this should be AT at decoupling into dH T of. Okay, just instead of T, I have put T decoupling because I am measuring the photons which are coming from the point of decoupling, from last scattering surface towards me. Okay, so now let us get back to hot Big Bang cosmology. Let us check. So this is the primary definition, and let us see from hot Big Bang cosmology whether this is consistent with observation or not. From hot Big Bang cosmology, what we can say is that your A is T power P with P less than 1. So if you put this A over here and if you integrate this quantity, then dH comes out to be a generic function of P which looks like this. You can just calculate, you can put this value over here, you can integrate this quantity, okay, and that turns out to this. You put, instead of here is Ti, here for T you put T decoupling, and that will give you this result. Okay, fine. So what about this quantity? P is less than 1. If P is less than 1, then this is a pretty small quantity. Okay, so this quantity, out of these two quantities, you guarantee that in hot Big Bang cosmology, this is a pretty small quantity. Let me just rub this part up. Okay. So this is a pretty small quantity. And what about A? As I said, A varies as T power half at very early time. Okay, so A increases with T, but at a very slow rate. Okay, so at very early time, A is also a very small quantity. Is it clear to everybody? At very early time, we have radiation area in hot Big Bang cosmology. And at that time, your scale factor basically increases as just T power half. And T is very small. At very early time, T is very small, so A is very small. So at the end of the day, what you get is that this is a product of two small quantities. So your horizon size, this is your dH. This part is your dH. Okay, the distance from last scattering surface today. So the dH, as you measure in hot Big Bang cosmology, is a pretty small quantity. You have a very small horizon size sitting over here. So from hot Big Bang cosmology, what you can predict is that you are an observer sitting over here. Okay, so this is your prediction. This is not a conclusion. From hot Big Bang cosmology, what you can predict is that You are an observer sitting over here, and you have a horizon just outside yourself, which is pretty small. Okay, so now if this horizon is pretty small, from thermodynamics, from thermal history of the universe, we can readily show that photons do not have sufficient time to get thermally stabilized. Because photons, they need to have some time to get thermally stabilized. Okay, so now so what does it mean? This basically means this distance is pretty small. So photons have evolved. So a photon has evolved here. Okay, and that has, from Hort-Big cosmology, what is the conclusion is that that is coming through a very small distance, and that is reached the observer. Another photon is there at a different temperature. Okay, and that has come through a very small distance, and that has reached the observer. A third photon has evolved here. Okay, and that comes to the observer through this distance. Okay, and these photons, they are at different temperature, and since this distance is pretty small, basically they don't have sufficient time to evolve such that they are thermally stabilized. Okay, so your observation demands rather that photons must be thermally stabilized. But Hort-Big Bang cosmology basically tells you that photons do not have sufficient time to get thermally stabilized. Okay? Is the logic clear? Okay, fine. So this is the second conflict between theory and observation. Somehow you'll have to give a way out. Okay. So this is the second problem. These are the most important problems as of now, but I will discuss the third problem as well. Fourth problem has a completely different origin. Okay. But first three problems have the same origin, which I'll come to later on. But let me let me just mention the third problem as well. This is called horizon problems. I'm sorry, I'm just giving you the names. The first one is called flatness problem, the second one is called horizon problem. These are names you will come across frequently. Okay, fine. So I don't know to what extent you have studied this thermal history, but let me assume that you know up to this part as well. So as the universe evolves, basically the universe is expanding, the temperature is basically decreasing. Okay, so universe is cooling down, and there are different phases of phase transition. Have you studied this thing?
No,
Oh my God. Okay. So for this moment, let us just forget about this problem, because I need to explain phase transition, because otherwise you cannot understand what I mean by this. Basically, I wanted to discuss this unwanted relic problem. Okay, so for those who know a little bit of it, basically let me just give you very small discussion about it. Okay, fine. So in other words, you can explain it in this way, that at very early time your universe was pretty hot. Okay, so since this is at very high energy, the governing physics should be high energy physics. Okay, now in high energy physics, along with your standard model fields, you have other non-standard model fields as well. Okay, which basically gives you the unwanted relics like monopoles. Say monopoles, I think Seshadri has already discussed this, monopoles. So along with monopoles, you can have cosmic strings, you can have domain walls and everything. So if you believe that at high energy, some high energy physics basically governs the evolution of the universe, at that time you can naturally have, through phase transition, you can naturally have some relics along with your, whatever you see today, along with your standard model. These relics will also be produced. Okay, they are monopoles, cosmic strings, domain walls and everything. But if you go to observation, today's observation basically tells you is that all you see are standard model particles. You don't see anything beyond standard model particles. So you don't see those relics. Okay, so this is very briefly what I wanted to suggest. This is called unwanted relic problem. There is another problem as well. If you have, say, magnetic monopole, then what is the problem? From theoretical point of view, there is at all, say, if you forget about all these things, and if you go back to your BSc kind of knowledge, then also you can say suppose Maxwell's equation, if you have magnetic monopole, then Maxwell's equations are violated. You cannot have a magnetic monopole. Okay. So present day observation basically suggests that you cannot have basically any kind of unwanted relics. But theory of Hartwig cosmology, they basically suggest that you do have some kind of unwanted relics at very early time. So if they are there, where have they gone? This is another question which is called unwanted relic problem. But I won't go into the details of this problem because you don't know these phase transition business and everything. Okay. So let's just forget about this problem. Let's focus on first two problems and the fourth one. Okay. The fourth one has got a very different origin, and that is basically being discussed in Tirth's lecture and Seshadri's lecture as well, that cosmic structure. As I have started with, my universe is homogeneous and isotropic at very large scale. Okay. So in my universe, so I have started with perfectly homogeneous and isotropic universe, which is F or W. Okay. But today we see there are lots of cosmic structures here and there. We are there, the solar system is there, the stars are there, the galaxies are there, the clusters are there, and so on and so forth. Okay, so where from they have originated? This is one second question. So you are starting with perfectly homogeneous and isotropic universe. So if you start with a perfectly homogeneous and isotropic universe, it should remain the same all the time. From where did this inhomogeneity? So in Tirth's lecture and in Seshadri's lecture, you have basically studied that there are actually inhomogeneities and anisotropies. Forget about anisotropies, there are actually inhomogeneities. Okay. But now the basic question arises is that where from did they originate? Okay. We don't have any explanation from where they have originated. If they are there, then this is the physics. Okay, that is fine. But where from they originated at all? Because we are starting from a perfectly homogeneous and isotropic universe. Okay, and a perfectly homogeneous and isotropic universe cannot give rise to this inhomogeneities. Okay, is it clear? Now, there is first and foremost attempt. The attempt is that in matter-dominated era, you can have some kind of Jeans instability. I think in this lecture you have studied this, Jeans instability. So in matter-dominated era, you have some kind of Jeans instability which can basically give rise to some kind of inhomogeneities, which can be responsible for structure formation. But the problem is that matter-dominated era is a very recent phenomenon, because this matter-dominated era. So all I wanted to mention is this is perfectly homogeneous and isotropic. Homogeneous and isotropic. But we see inhomogeneities, but there are inhomogeneities. This is what I get from observation. Okay, even in CMB. Okay. But if we see that from matter-dominated era, if the explanation is through Jeans instability, then the basic problem is that matter-dominated era is quite a late time phenomenon, as you know. Okay, so this happens at of the order of Z 10.4. But as we see CMB, that is a pretty CMB, that is a pretty early scale physics, and even in CMB you see inhomogeneities. Okay, so these inhomogeneities, but as I have shown, this temperature and isotropy plot, that basically gives you this thing. If you don't have any kind of inhomogeneities, the plot should look like this. Okay, so in CMB you do see some kind of inhomogeneities which have basically originated much before matter-dominated era. So now so this is guaranteed. Now so from observation you see inhomogeneities before matter-dominated era. So Jeans instability does not suffice in explaining the formation of structures. Okay, first and foremost. This is one kind of explanation, but this does not suffice. Okay. Now what happens? In hot Big Bang cosmology, before matter-dominated era, you have radiation-dominated era. So now we try to explain this formation of structures through radiation-dominated era. And you don't have any kind of explanation in radiation-dominated era by which you can explain this formation of structure, because this Jeans instability and everything, that is a sole property of matter-dominated era alone. Is it clear? Is the logic clear to you? Okay, you have in hot Big Bang cosmology, you have radiation-dominated era and then matter-dominated era. In matter-dominated era, you do have Jeans instability, which can explain. But it happens to be show that you see from observation instabilities before matter-dominated era. Okay, so you need to explain instabilities in radiation-dominated era. But there is no kind of Jeans instability or any other kind of instability sitting at radiation-dominated era which can explain the formation of structures. Is it clear? Okay, so this guarantees that even before radiation dominated era, you should have something else which might take care of this formation of structures and which are basically getting reflected in C and D. Is the logic clear? Okay. So this is called the structure formation problems. Okay. So that's it. There are lots of other problems, but we have focused on 4 problems only. So first 3 of them have same origin as I have discussed, but the later one is have got the origin at some other point, and this is what I will show, that the most promising success of inflationary paradigm is to explain structure formation perfectly. So whatever structure formation, whatever structures we see in CMB, okay, inflationary paradigm can perfectly explain them. So this is the most astounding feature of inflationary paradigm, that it can not only solve the first 3 problems, but at the same time, this is the most important problem, because this basically explains why at all we are there. An inflationary paradigm gives you a very interesting paradigm, it's a very interesting theory by which you can explain that you have indeed have structure formation from this initial homogeneous and isotropic universe, but not in hot Big Bang. Okay? You should realize the difference between hot Big Bang cosmology and inflationary paradigm. These 2 are different. Okay, I'll come to that point later on. So the bottom line here is that, if you believe in observation, which you should do as a cosmologist, and at the same time, if you believe in hot Big Bang cosmology, then you will be trouble. So what to do? Either you can say, I am not bothered about observation, then you will gone. You should not be cosmology. Because cosmology, as I said, is an observation facility. You will have to basically believe on observation. Okay. So what you see is that you try to find out where basically lies the real problem, and as you can find out, the real problem lies in hot Big Bang cosmology, that framework. And what is the real problem? There is a basic catch. As I was trying to point out, the catch is that in hot Big Bang cosmology, everywhere we have assumed that A double dot less than 0, which basically resulted in a solution A proportional to T for T with P less than 1. This is the point I was trying to stretch on from the very first class. Okay. So now let us propose that somehow, I will explain this somehow in great details later on. Okay. But for this moment, let us propose that somehow, let us start with the situation that before radiation dominated era, somehow there was a phase where you can have actually A double dot greater than 0. Okay, I will explain this somehow. Don't take it that I am just bypassing the problem. Okay, so I will explain this. So this is my real business, to build up inflationary model. I will discuss those things in detail. But for this moment, let us just try to see that if you propose these things, then you can readily resolve those problems. Okay, you can readily resolve those problems. So somehow the way out is that if you consider that, so consider basically A double dot greater than 0. Which readily gives you A is proportional to T power T, of course, once again, but there is an essential difference. The difference is this. T is greater than. You can readily check. Okay, but you will have to pay a price for that. Let's get back to FRW equation. What is the equation? A double dot by A is minus 4 pi G by 3 rho plus P. So this is the answer to somehow, first and foremost. This is just the beginning, rho plus Tp. And as I say, any kind of standard model field, be it radiation, matter, be it any other kind of standard model field, you have rho greater than 0, P greater than 0, so this quantity is negative definitely. But now, you demand that you have A double dot greater than 0. So if A double dot is greater than 0, then your conclusion is that rho plus 3P should be less than 0. And in geometrical language, what it means is that there is this violation of strong energy condition. What does it mean? Strong energy condition necessarily means that rho plus 3P should be greater than 0. This is what happens for strong ordinary matter. So this basically claims that somehow whoever is responsible for inflation, whoever is responsible for this kind of acceleration, A double dot greater than 0, that should be some kind of exotic matter which has the property that its rho plus 3p is less than 0. Is the logic clear? Okay, I will explain who can be responsible, because this is something unusual. Okay, as you know, we don't know any kind of matter which can give rise to rho plus 3p less than 0. So I will explain who can be responsible for this thing later. Okay. So for this moment, let us assume that this is possible. If you consider some exotic kind of matter, then you can have indeed rho plus 3p less than 0, and then you can have a double dot greater than 0. Okay. So if you assume a double dot greater than 0, then let us check that these problems can be resolved actually. Okay. So this is the first and foremost problem, and this basically tells you that at so what I basically want to stress on, that if you have your hot Big Bang cosmology, then your universe starts from a decelerating phase. But here I claim that before that you have an accelerating phase. Okay, so if I have at very early time an accelerating phase, then I can readily show that those puzzles can be resolved.
Can you think of that this A double dot is actually combination of two things which are competing with each other, and in previous time, before Big Bang theory, there was something predominantly for this A double dot greater than 0, later on it is
perfect. That's it. That is what I'm trying to explain later on. Okay, that's perfect. Because I mean, you will see that at some point inflation should end. I'll explain that thing. Inflation will end. So this quantity will be subdominant at some point, and then radiation dominated area, that will take the charge. Okay, I'll explain that later. Okay, fine. Okay, now suppose, so let us start. So I will explain this part. So you have, as I said, you have this G mu nu equals T mu nu part. I will explain this T mu nu part in great details later on. Okay. First of all, let us focus on this G mu nu part, because from G mu nu, as you know, we need to have a double dot greater than 0. So now let us convince ourselves that if we start with a double dot greater than 0, we can readily solve these puzzles first and foremost. Then only we can try to find out this T mu nu and everything. Okay. Okay. So once again, let's get back to this. If my A double dot greater than 0, then what happened to my A dot squared now? Okay, so what happened to this quantity? So let us solve this first puzzle first and foremost. First puzzle, what does it state basically? It basically states you that omega curvature, which is minus k by a naught square h naught squared, okay, that should be 0 from observation, but hot Big Bang cosmology does not respect that thing. Okay, so fine. So now let us find out how much is the value of a dot square. So what is the denominator sitting over here right now? So a square is from here, as you see, a square is once again a dot squared, okay. So this is now an increasing function. Okay, you have your a double dot, there is a sign flip over here. Okay, if your a double dot greater than 0, then a dot square should be an increasing function. Okay, so if this is an increasing function, then this omega curvature, which is minus a squared by a naught squared, h naught squared, okay, this denominator part, okay, which was a square h squared, this basically, since this is an increasing function, and if you have a very huge value of a, okay, so if this is very fast, if you have a very huge value of a, then this term, this denominator term, that will lead to 0 very fast. Okay, so this basically guarantees that your omega total minus 1, that tending to 0 at, so very fast, at very early time. Okay, and this is what is required basically. As I said, from Big Bang cosmology, you can predict that to satisfy your observational demands, these quantities should be very small at very early time. That should be of the order of 10 power minus 16 during nucleosynthesis. But you did not have any kind of explanation why its value is that. In Big Bang cosmology, you don't have any kind of explanation. Okay, but here you see you do have a natural explanation that, so that's why I said that you have some kind of fine tuning in hot Big Bang cosmology. But here you don't need any kind of fine tuning. You can see that somehow you have modified your scale factor in such a way that this is a quantity which basically gives you super acceleration, very fast expansion at early time. This quantity is huge, so that the denominator term readily goes to a very huge quantity, so that the total quantity readily goes to 0 at very early time. Okay, so that when you come to, when your theory boils down to standard Big Bang cosmology, when you come to radiation emitted era, you already see that your omega curvature is gone. Okay, and that's why you see when you measure it today, you see that omega curvature is 0. There is no problem at all. Okay, so this is, it is the very fast expansion, very fast acceleration at early time, which can readily make omega curvature to be 0, which is basically demanded from. Okay, is it clear? Okay. So, first and foremost, we have convinced ourselves that omega curvature equals almost equal to 0 today. That can readily be explained once you suggest, once you basically assume that it is. Okay, that's it. Once again, I say, I assure you that who basically gives rise to a double dot greater than 0, I will discuss this thing in details. Okay, but for this moment, let us assume that there is something, some quantity, some physical quantity which can explain a double dot greater than 0. And once you have a double dot greater than 0, we can readily solve this problem by this one. Okay, so first and foremost, which problem is resolved? The tightness problem is resolved. Okay. So, second point, a double dot greater than 0, that is still required. Okay. So, if we have a double dot greater than 0, once again, as we know, a is proportional to t bar p with p greater than 1. So, this is the essential distinction, difference. Okay. Yes, yes.
Here we are thinking like that this early universe was not exactly Hawking.
Is basically defined as the H T decoupling equals A T decoupling into DH T decoupling, and in hot Big Bang cosmology what we got is that this is a small quantity and this is also a small quantity. So this quantity is pretty small. So our horizon size was pretty small as predicted from hot Big Bang cosmology, and during this time we did not, these photons did not have sufficient time to get double stabilized. Now let us see how considering a double dot greater than 0 increases this horizon size to a great extent. Let us see. So if somehow we can increase my horizon size to a great extent, then photons will have sufficient time to get thermally stabilized. This is my primary target, to give photons sufficient times. Okay, to get thermally stabilized. Okay, fine. So now, what is this quantity? First and foremost, this quantity, my integration ti to t, that quantity dt by t. So now I break this thing. Let us start from ti, that is origin of inflation, to t decoupling, and I measure this quantity dht decoupling, which is dt by at. Okay, and at the same time I measure another quantity which is from t decoupling to today, the same quantity, that is dt, sorry, this is, okay, fine, dt by at. Okay, so I have two quantities. Basically, I have broken this term into two parts. Okay, from the origin of inflation to decoupling, and then from decoupling to today. Okay, as we know, from decoupling to today, we have the decelerating phases, which are basically given by t power half and then t power 2/3. Okay, and for which this term is pretty small. We have already guaranteed that this term is pretty small because this evolves as p bar p, as I have already discussed. Can you remember that thing? This evolves as p by 1 minus p into h inverse. Okay, so this quantity is now, this quantity also evolves as p by 1 minus p into h inverse. This quantity also evolves as p by 1 minus p h inverse. Okay, but this quantity was pretty small because p was less than 1. But now I say p is greater than 1, and this basically makes this quantity large. Okay, so this quantity is now pretty large because first and foremost you have AT, which is a different AT now. Okay, because this AT is for inflation, which gives you a double dot greater than 0. This AT is not for radiation dominated area, not for matter dominated area. Okay, for radiation in matter dominated area, for decelerating phases, you have a small quantity. But for inflationary era, when you have super acceleration at very early time, this quantity gives rise to the same factor. But here the essential distinction is that you have P which is greater than 1. Okay, and this guarantees that first and foremost, somehow you have increased this quantity at very early time, and as you already know, you have very fast acceleration at early time, which guarantees that this quantity is now huge. Okay, so you have a large quantity, you cannot claim whether this is huge or large, but at least you can claim that this is a large quantity, and this you know this is a huge quantity. Is the distinction clear? Is the distinction clear? Okay, in hot Big Bang cosmology, this was a small quantity because this just varied as T power half. Okay, but now we have a super acceleration. To give you a feeling, this can vary as e powered h t. Okay, I will explain other things as well, but just to give you a feeling. So this is now a huge quantity because you have a super acceleration at very early time. So at the end of the day, what you get is that this quantity, this horizon, this is a huge quantity once you assume a double dot density. What happens? What happens? Hold on a minute. What happens?
Some sort of
Huh?
some sort of blast.
So in hot Big Bang cosmology, you could see from theory, you could see up to this area. Okay, you could see photons coming up to this point. And this was not sufficient to. So actually in hot Big Bang cosmology, whatever you call a horizon, the last scattering surface, that is not the last scattering surface actually. You are doing wrong calculations. Now you increase this thing in such a way that this becomes the horizon and this readily matches with your last scattering surface if you do some kind of manipulations. So I call it manipulations, but these are not manipulations. Okay. So I will show you how you can make it perfectly matching with last scattering surface. So now what happens is that this is now your horizon. In hot Big Bang cosmology, this was your horizon, which could not explain the sterilization of photons. But now we have this as horizon, which is a huge number, huge quantity. Okay. So now if this is huge, here what happened? Photons traversed just this much distance. But now photons are traversing this distance. Photons are traversing this distance, and so on and so forth. So now photons are really traversing a huge distance, and during this time they have got sufficient time to get thermally stabilized. This can be explained in thermal history of radios. There are very precise explanation in thermal history of radios how photons can basically get stabilized if they have got such amount of time. Okay. So now photons have sufficient amount of time so that they can get thermally stabilized. So that you see, when you look back at any direction, you see that they are same temperature 2.7 Kelvin at all directions. This is perfectly matching with CMB. Is the point clear? Okay. As I said, I will discuss. So this basically resolves the second problem, that is the horizon problem, and I will discuss this monopole problem once again. Forget about that. And so what it says, so as I said, that basically here is the catch that if you consider, I'm going late. Okay, fine. So if you consider that somehow you can make a double dot to be greater than 0, then somehow we can resolve most of the puzzles of standard Big Bang cosmology, hot Big Bang cosmology. Okay, and you can perfectly match it what you get from CMB observation. So by the same prescription, you can also explain the relics problem. But as I said, since you do not know the origin of relics, okay, I am not explaining. Okay, okay. But what about the last problem? Last problem has got this structure formation problem has got a very different origin. And once again, from the next class, I will discuss those things in details. Formation of structures in CMB. So whatever reflection you see in CMB, you don't see what was there before that, but you get reflection of those things in CMB. So how you can get the reflection of those things in CMB, that is the thing I will discuss in details, and that will basically explain the formation of structures. That will basically explain that even if you start from an initially perfectly homogeneous and isotropic universe, somehow you can have fluctuation on that. I will explain that somehow once again. Somehow you can have fluctuations on that, And this loss scattering surface basically gives you a snapshot of those fluctuations. So seeds of perturbations, they are basically encoded in the inflationary theory, and those perturbations from loss scattering surface till today, they have basically evolved, they have grown basically in course of time, and we are seeing this huge structure from that initially very small structures. Okay, I will explain this thing in detail. This is what I say in words. Okay, I will explain mathematically in detail. So I will explain basically perturbation theory. That will be a bit difficult, but I think I should give it a try. Okay. So I will explain this perturbation theory. Right now I am not explaining the fourth problem, but you will have to believe me that the structure formation. So and herein basically lies the major success of inflationary paradigm. That this structure formation can readily be explained in inflationary paradigm. How we can explain that thing? That is the point I will discuss for next class. Okay. So for this moment, let us guarantee that if you consider that before this radiation dominated era, you had a super accelerating phase for a very short while, you can readily resolve the problems. And now you are happy. So now you say that I have somehow modified my theory in such a way that I am starting with a very fast acceleration, then after some time I have decelerating phase, radiation dominated era, and then matter dominated era, and these basically explain most of the cosmological observations including C and D. Okay, now I am happy. But as Shes already suggested that physicists are really greedy, I am not yet happy because I have not yet explained this somehow. As I said, I have explained this G mu part, I have not yet explained T mu part. So I have not discussed the cause. Who is responsible for this kind of acceleration? Because as I have already shown you that ordinary matter cannot give you a double dot greater than 0. Ordinary matter, what does it give you? Rho plus 3p greater than 0. So that means ordinary matter can only give a double dot less than 0. So who is responsible for this a double dot greater than 0? Who basically gives rise to this? This is the major issue. Okay. So in the rest of the course, first and foremost, I will try to explain who is basically, so who is the candidate inflaton, so to say? Who is responsible? Who basically governs inflation? So I will basically focus on these two problems. First and foremost, who governs inflation? Okay. And secondly, how are cosmic structures formed? Not only that, if I say that cosmic structures are formed, then I should match the estimates with observations. Okay. So third and the most crucial one, so this is the second one, and the third and the most crucial one, that confronting with CMB observations. So what are the observable parameters? So these are more or less related. So first and foremost, I will explain this thing in the rest of this class, and from the next class, I will start with this. I will explain how you can form initial cosmic structures from initial homogeneous and isotropic universe, and then I will try to propose some observable parameters which can be measured in CMB, which are actually being measured in CMB, and those in fact those are basically measured from this class. Okay, so I will propose those parameters and I will give their values, how much are their values as of now, and I will show which model basically. So when you try to do this inflationary model building paradigm, you are not satisfied with having a double dot greater than 0, but you will have to come to this point as well. Okay. So once you have a new inflationary model, you will have to face the challenge that these are the values in CMB, these are the parameters. So you will have to match your theoretical predictions to those parameters. Is the logic clear? Unless you do that, you cannot say that I have given an inflationary model. Okay. So first and foremost, let us focus on this point, and then I will come to this other parts. Okay. So who governs inflation? Any question up to this point? Any question? Is it clear? Everybody? Is it clear to you? Okay. There are lots of candidates, but I will discuss 2 points only. Okay.
So we give them the matter and what are the matter was there. It was already existing there. the new method didn't come from in there.
Not yet I have told you. The first, so as you know, physicists are otherwise they are really clever. They make their life complicated to that extent up to which they are forced to do. Okay. So first and foremost, they tried with the most simplest extension of your Einstein inequality. What is the most simplest extension? So first and foremost, you just, I call it vacuum energy. Forget about that thing. You can call it cosmological constant. Okay, that sounds pretty familiar. Vacuum energy is little bit okay, it's a bit complicated. Okay, fine. So what they do is that we have started with G mu nu. Basically, till now, what we discussed that we have started with G mu nu equals kappa T mu nu. Now, what they do is that, as you know, if you know GR, then you know that there is a special gauge choice which basically reduces to this. And what was that gauge choice? The gauge choice is that along with this, you can add a constant, and since this is a tension, you will have to add a tensorial component over here, and lambda equals 0 basically gives rise to this. So this is just whatever you do in, say, electrodynamics, you choose Coulomb gauge. Just like that. So putting lambda equals 0 was just a spatial gauge choice, which usually were not necessary. Okay. But now I write down that actually the Einstein's equation should look like this, where you have a non-zero lambda. Okay. And this lambda is called cosmological constant. You can explain it other ways as well. So this basically gives you a second order differential equation. Okay. So if this gives rise to a second order differential equation, then there should be an integration constant over here. Okay. So this basically supplies that integration constant. Okay. Along with that, you have a G mu nu just to take care of this tensorial indices. Okay. Fine. So this is that free index. If you put lambda equals 0, means that your integration constant equals 0. That was a very special choice. Okay, that was an initial condition. So now I say that I am more or less free, and I assume that I don't have lambda equals 0. I don't use that gauge choice. I put it over here. So if I put it over here, let's see what happens. So now my Friedmann equations, and why I call it to be vacuum energy, I am not going to the details of that thing because this is another subject. Okay, you will have to do quantum field theory and everything. But let me just mention, if you are curious, let me just mention that this lambda, that can be shown from theoretical point of view to be the vacuum expectation value of your quadratic matter. This is just the point I am mentioning. I am not going to the details. But there are lots of problems because when you try to estimate, there are lots of mismatch with its present value. Okay, lots of mismatch. I will come to that point later on. But forget about that thing. Let's just consider this as a cosmological constant and start from this equation. Post-lunch sessions are really good to skip. Tea break would have been better. Okay. So are you getting bored or what? This sleep is normal, I know. But otherwise, I mean, other things clear or getting time? So let's just start. So you start with G mu nu. Okay. So you can add plus or minus, whatever you call it. I add minus. Okay. Or no, basically I have added plus. Okay, it doesn't matter. It's a constant, you choose it. So if I do that thing and once again I calculate those Friedmann equations, what I get is that A dot by A whole squared equals, I had 8 pi g by 3 into rho, but I don't have any kind of rho over here. Okay, forget about T mu nu. You consider that everything is given by this, because this is the dominant contribution now, as I said. Okay, all of them radiation matter, they are subdominant contribution, they are not at all present there. Okay, so this is the dominant contribution. If you put this fellow over here, this will give you lambda by 3 minus T by A squared. Okay? So this is the first equation, and second equation you can readily get A double dot by A is nothing but lambda by 3. So these are the two equations. you can always attribute rho and p to lambda. What is that? You can attribute rho lambda, okay, which is, so this is your rho lambda basically. 8 pi g by 3 are included over here. I am not writing it down. Okay, so 3 is there, so rho lambda is just lambda. Okay, so rho lambda is just lambda, and this is just p lambda. If you check it from here, that will be p lambda. Okay, because this is rho plus 3p and everything, you can calculate and you can find that out. For p equation, you have this minus 2 a double dot by a minus a dot by a whole square, etc. You know. Okay, fine. Oh, sorry, minus p lambda. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is minus p lambda. So that means the equation of state is perfectly minus 1. Okay. And with this, you can have readily simultaneous solution. These equations are really easy to solve. So you can have simultaneous solution, which basically gives you e power lambda by 3 into t, which you can write as e power hi into t. Okay. So first and foremost, let us stop here and check that we are on the right track. What is the evolution right now? This is exponential as t. So first and foremost, this guarantees acceleration. Okay, for radiation WT data, you had e power half, which guaranteed deceleration. So it guarantees acceleration, but we should not be content with that, because we will have to confirm that the acceleration is really fast. Okay, because unless the acceleration is really fast, you cannot solve the horizon problem. To solve the horizon problem, the horizon size should be huge. So the acceleration should be really fast. So if the acceleration has to be fast, this quantity sitting over here, that should be a huge quantity. From observational point of view, if you match it with observation, then this HI turns out to be 10 power 15 giga electron volt. So this is really huge for Okay. Okay, is this point here. So now there are lots of it. First and foremost, there are, once again as I said, basically people are really greedy, so they are not satisfied with what they get. Once again, another group, they basically tried to claim that who fixes this lambda? From where did this lambda come? Is this just an arbitrary constant? And we are not satisfied. Then people tried to explain that this lambda is basically vacuum expectation value of t mean mu, and they tried to match this quantity with whatever prediction you can have. So whatever h you have today, so this is what h you require from 10 power 15 GeV from observation at very early time. But you can measure h today. As I have shown you, h today is how much? In the last class, this is around 70, 69 point something. Okay, this is h today. Okay, h naught. So somehow, if this is wave, it should evolve from this value to around 70 today during 13.8 billion years. And there is a huge problem. Why? Because if you try to evolve this quantity, which started at very early time, okay, and that has evolved in course of time to 70, then you need to have a huge amount of fine tuning. Okay, how much is the fine tuning? The fine tuning amount is, so this is, here lies the, so there are some drawbacks. So this is a very simple prescription. We were happy if it didn't have any drawback. But it has got very serious drawbacks. I am discussing only 2. Okay, I will discuss 3 actually. First and foremost, this was its value at early time, but its present day value is around 70. So now, using these waves and expectation everything, GeV. Oh, here I have not scaled this quantity. So this basically gives you the energy scale of inflation, at which energy basically inflation have occurred. Okay. So as I basically, so I know the confusion. The point is that here cosmologists basically they basically, I mean, at some point they use the unit when they are basically, when they require that unit, and at some other point they don't use that unit. Now when you talk about early universe, you talk about those units because those are those estimates. So now it basically means that this basically here, why I have used that unit, Because this basically tells you that the energy scale of inflation is 10 power 16 GeV. So at that energy, inflation have occurred. Okay, so that's why people use this 10 power 15 GeV, and I am not giving that. So that's why I say if you basically try to match it, the fine tuning you required is basically you need a fine tuning which is of the order of 10 power 123. So if you make it a dimensionless quantity, that will be that value, not 10 power 15 GeV. Okay.
No mega
Just a minute.
in just 70 is
This will be GeV square. Thank you very much. Okay, forget about that thing. You can just take home the point that this should be a huge quantity just to take care of very fast acceleration at RE time. And if you try to explain that same parameter has evolved during this time to this value, then you need to have this much amount of fine tuning, which is a huge fine tuning, 10 power 123 amount. Okay, so now let us just get back. We are on the same loop. We tried to overcome a fine tuning. Our primary target was to overcome a fine tuning, okay, which was there in Big Bang cosmology, and that has evolved to a more stringent fine tuning, more strong fine tuning. So we are not satisfied, first and foremost. So we are not satisfied that at least this constant can explain this evolution at very high time. Okay, so this is the first problem with cosmological constant. Even if this gives a very simple explanation of this point, very fast explanation, but we are not satisfied with this. Secondly, okay, let me just discuss this thing, that this cannot explain this cosmic coincidence problem. What does it mean? This basically means, as we know, that this omega matter is how much? As of now, omega matter is around 0.3. Okay, and omega radiation, omega dark energy is how much? 0.7. So I call it omega lambda right now. Okay, so they are of the same order today. This is 0.3, this is 0.7. Okay, so they are of the same order today from observation. Now, this cosmological constant cannot readily explain why they are of the same order today. This is just a coincidence. Because we, the intelligent people, we are born today, and we have made our experimental sophistications in such a way that we can measure those values, and we see that they are of the same order. It could have happened that we could measure everything at very early time, and then one of them are gone, or at very late time, then the other has gone. Why it happened to be so that exactly at this time, when we are that much intelligent to measure them, they are of same value.
intelligent planar.
Okay, that's it. So they are of same value. Why it happened to be so? This is called the coincidence problem, and there is no natural explanation from cosmological constant why they have the same value as of now. Okay, this is their present value. This is what I am trying to stay on repeatedly. This is their present value. So why both omega matter and omega lambda, they are of same value as of now? Why we are measuring them? Because if one of them were gone today, then we could have, so there could have been illusion. We could have concluded that that quantity is not at all there. And that would have led to wrong conclusions, so to say. So since both of them are present today, and which leads to correct conclusion, so this is called coincidence, and you don't have any natural explanation of this cosmic coincidence problem if you consider that cosmological constant is responsible for this situation. And third and most crucial one is, if this is a constant, it cannot explain your formation of structures. Structures cannot form from a constant. Okay, as simple as that. So at the end of the bottom line is that we tried to make our life just a little bit difficult from Einsteinian gravity, but that could not solve the purpose. Okay, so even if we start from cosmological constant, we can have a superaccelerating universe that leads to huge problems. So that cannot explain our universe. Okay, so now we make our life a little bit more complicated. We will have it. Why I discuss this thing? Because I am trying to prove this fact before you, that in physics you will make your life that much complicated up to which you are forced to do. Okay, and this basically does not serve the purpose. Okay, so that's why we will have to, now we are forced to make our life a little bit more complicated, and we assume that instead of this constant we have some kind of an evolving field, some dynamical field, which is basically responsible for this. Until now, before I start, let me tell you that till today, this is the most acceptable model for inflation. Okay. So this is the one, my primary target is to focus on this model. I'm not talking about, there are other models like modified gravity models and everything, but I'm not talking about those things. So this is the paradigm I will discuss in details, that dynamical. So how much time do I have? I'm supposed to finish it. Okay, big challenge. Let me see. Okay. So as I said, instead of cosmological constant, I consider a dynamical field, but first of all I will have to guarantee that this field is not made up of standard model particles. Because once again let me repeat, standard model particles give rise to rho plus 3p. So this field is some kind of exotic field, and once again we are just making our life little bit complicated, so the simplest case I can consider is scalar field. Okay. So for scalar field, my T mu nu is now given by T mu nu is just a function of phi, and this function I called inflaton. Sorry, this phi I called inflaton. You can make your life even more complicated. Instead of considering scalar field, you can consider a vector field or tensor field. Okay, your calculations will be more complicated. You can work it out. You can have the solutions, but unfortunately, it happens to be so when you. So first and foremost, if you consider instead of scalar field, if you consider vectors and tensors, so this is the question I usually face at some points, that why I don't consider tensors and vectors. Okay, because they are more rich. So if I consider them, my calculations will be a little bit difficult. Okay, but I can do those calculations. But at the end of the day, the problem is that when you try to match them with CMB observation, you are in danger. Once again, CMB readily constrains vector and tensor. So that's why I say a constant that is forbidden, okay? Vectors, tensor fields, they are forbidden. So all we are left with today is a scalar field. Okay, so that's why I said this is most probably the candidate inflaton, and now this is the most acceptable theory for inflaton model. So that is why I am focusing on this. Okay, so this is a function. So this is a function, and this, as I know, this should be some kind of beyond standard model fields, because as we know, standard model fields cannot give you a double dot. So this field should be made of some kind of beyond standard model fields, some exotic. Okay, fine. So if you have a scalar field, I know you know the scalar field theory, right? You know classical field theory. Don't bother about quantum field theory. You know classical field theory. So you can write down the Lagrangian for that scalar field.
Now we have only this Higgs field as a scalar field.
Okay, Higgs is a scalar. As simple as that.
Nothing else.
Higgs is in standard model, that's why I say. But this should be beyond standard model field. Okay, those fields you have not yet observed. Okay, because as I say, once again let me repeat, since this is a very regular confusion, this is a very regular confusion, that where from do I get these fields? Okay, first and foremost, let me repeat once again that any kind of standard model field cannot serve the purpose because they will lead to rho plus 3p greater than 0. But I need rho plus 3p less than 0, so I need to take shelter of any kind of field which is beyond standard model. Okay, so whatever phi this is, we have not yet observed them because this phi has got very huge energy as simple as that, but whatever phi this is, this must be beyond standard model field, first and foremost. So we will see only the reflections in CMB, and from there we will predict about this phi. That's it. Okay. So if I have that thing, then I can write down the Lagrangian, which is half del mu phi minus d phi, where this is the kinetic part, this is the potential part, and this basically, with this you can write down the T mu nu as well, because you will have to solve now G mu nu equals T mu nu. So you write down the T mu nu, from there. Anyone is on there? So T mu nu is your del mu phi minus G mu nu of, only difference is that you are now working in curved space, okay? So instead of eta mu nu, you have this G mu nu sitting over here. Okay, you'll have to take care of that thing. Del sigma phi. So this is your Lagrangian. From there you can calculate this T mu nu. Okay. And what are the components of T mu nu? You can readily write them down. If you calculate rho and T from here, T00 will give you rho and Tij will give you T. Okay. And if you calculate that thing, that is pretty important. From here you can get rho phi, which is phi dot square by 2 plus d phi dot is with respect to T. Okay. And P phi is phi dot square by 2. So now we have defined T mu nu. Our primary target is to define T mu nu, so that now we can equate it with G mu nu. We know G mu nu already. G mu nu is that same A dot by A whole square and A double dot by A. Okay. So now we have defined T mu nu, and with this let us try to solve my G mu nu equals T mu nu equation. Okay. I have at least 5 minutes. Fine. So what do you get? If you try to solve G mu nu equals T mu nu equation, first of all the equations gives you h square is 8 pi c by 3. You have rho, right? Rho is pi dot square plus this. And your second equation h dot, h is a dot by a, you remember that thing? Okay. So this is minus 4 pi g by 3 pi dot square. Okay, and you have a third equation which is your conservation equation. Okay, so if you use that conservation equation with Gauss space, what you get is pi double dot 3h pi dot plus this times pi. So these are the governing equations now. These two are your Friedmann equations as usual. Okay, with whatever rho and p we have found out, and this is your conservation equation. Now you can look back into this equation. Those who know already, this is nothing but your Klein-Gordon equation in Gauss space, because in this basically gives you the curvature. Okay, so this is nothing but your Klein-Gordon equation, but in Gauss space, and this is what this should be the equation for a scalar field, and we are guaranteeing that from conservation equation we get the same equation, with only difference that this is the contribution for gravitation, and which basically gives you this is a term proportional to phi dot. So this is a frictional term. Okay, so this is called Hubble friction. What does it mean? It basically tells you that if you didn't have this term, then phi double dot plus d prime phi, and phi basically tries to roll down the potential. Now this acceleration of the universe, the gravitation, role of gravitation is to put some friction to it. So for free field, if you don't have, so if you walk in flat space, if you don't have gravitation, okay, then that scalar field readily rolls down the potential. Okay. So now if you add some gravity, this basically gives you some additional frictional force to that potential, so that the rate of falling down slows down. So this is the role of gravity.
KD equation takes care of this temporal and spatial component.
Sorry?
This KD equation takes care of temporal as well as the spatial part, both, but here only
Yeah, exactly.
temporal part is there.
Of course.
So
No, this one, there is no special part. V prime is with respect to phi. Dot is with respect to time. Okay, prime is with respect to phi. This is dv d phi. Okay.
So that is fine, but there should be some Laplacian.
Yeah, that if you break that Laplacian, because now as I have shown, you are not working on flat space, you are not working on eta mu nu, you are working on g mu nu. So your definition of Laplacian also changes. Okay. So if you break that Laplacian, that will boil down to this term actually. That will give you this term. So this is the addition for gravity. Okay. So this is all gravity does. It basically gives you an additional friction. You have a gravity, you have an additional friction. That's it. Okay. So now if you had a different kind of gravity, here you have background FW cosmology. So the friction looks like this. If instead of FW you had a different kind of gravity, you could have a different kind of Klein-Gordon equation. Okay. Fine. So these are the governing equations.
So, if we take the mu to be eta mu, then we will also get this same equation. Then why?
Then if you won't have H,
Yeah, H will be because to multiply the energy density scale factor to value of H.
That's an analogy, okay? So what you are trying to tell is that you consider that thing and you consider your free space to be, say, some kind of a volume kind of thing, and then you just multiply that thing. That sort of analogy, people try to do, draw those kinds of analogies to explain those things simply, but to be more rigorous, to be more correct, you will have to do everything in fact curve space, okay? That's why I am trying to stress on, okay? If you try to draw an analogy, you can draw that analogy like whatever he is explaining. If you try to draw an analogy, you can do all those calculations in fact space. Okay, and you can say now these three volume, this scale factor basically takes care of this three volume. So you are just multiplying that thing by hand.
And then scale factor is also function of time, so if you divide that also.
Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. That is what I am trying to say. If you want to draw an analogy, this is true. But the problem, the catch over here is you will have to remember that thing that in GEAR, you cannot always draw some kind of analogy. So analogy sometimes works, but it does not work all the time. The better to do is that you calculate offhand directly from your curve space geometry and you calculate it. Because at every point you cannot draw that analogy. At this point that is fine, but this is not true everywhere.
And here is not considered that phi is also function of space.
I am not considering that. But, so that is to answer to his question as well. So I am considering only the time evolution because this is what it matters. Okay, right now I say my tree space is more or less, it remains the same. I am considering the time evolution only because the scale factor is the function of time only. So I am considering the time evolution. I am not considering any kind of inhomogeneity and anisotropy right now.
That's
Okay.
gradient term is not clear.
Exactly. So till now I am considering perfectly homogeneous anisotropy. So only the time evolution. Okay, so I think I should stop at this point. Okay. So at the end of the day, what we get is that I think we have convinced ourselves that at least there are some very serious problems of orbital cosmology for which we'll have to assume that, and basically we don't have to assume, actually the observations there, so this demand is basically kicking in. Okay, from observation you have lots of other observations which will come to later on. Okay, so at least from very simple observations you can say that at very early time you had a very fast accelerating phase for a very short while, but you had that thing before it is okay. So now our primary target is to explain that observation first and foremost, who basically gives rise to that acceleration first and foremost, and secondly, from that alone we will have to explain how these cosmic structures have formed, and third, the point is that what are the reflections of that initial impression on your observation. These are the 3 points. And first and foremost point we are trying to address, and as we have convinced ourselves that most likely a scalar field is responsible for this thing. So these are the governing equations for scalar field. So now our primary target is to find out a way. So as you see, this is really now more complicated than considering radiation and matter. Because why? Because this d phi can take any value. So if d phi is really complicated, then these equations are really complicated to solve. So now we'll have to, once again, as I say time and again, that human being, they are really brilliant. So they just find some way out and make it tractable. Okay. So from next class we will start how we can make the equations look a little bit simpler so that you can extract physics out of them without solving them. Okay, our primary target is to extract out physics, not to solve them. Okay. So we will try to find that out, and then we will go to this structure formation. Okay. Very bad.